Welcome back, everybody. On to our book feature now. Now, it tells the story of a young man's fortitude to achieve his life goals. That's intrepid entrepreneur, explorer and author Adam Jethro's debut novel titled Pleasures of the Harbour. The book is part adventure and part action with lots and lots of wheeling and dealing. Cape Town-based Adam Jethro joins us now via Zoom to tell us more about his book. Mr. Adam, a very good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Simpio, good morning, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Great stuff. It's an absolute pleasure. Now, give us a brief synopsis of what Pleasures of the Harbour is all about and what the inspiration is behind this book.
Thank you, Simpio. You know, as a young boy, I didn't show any particular aptitude, so my parents sent me on tests and they said that maybe I should become a journalist.
Okay.
Anyway, after I finished the army, I published a few articles in the school magazine, but I realized that to become a writer at a young age was going to be a very difficult way to make a living. So I decided to go into business so as I could try and make my fortune so that I could write a book later on in my life. So cutting a long story short, I started my own company when I was 23 in 1980, and I retired in 2005, and I started 5 years ago writing books about my life in a novel form, because the book is part novel, part biography, and in a way part business manual.
Okay.
And you know, there are a lot of people around today that didn't know that world. You know, I've got two sons that were born in 2000. They didn't know that world. They didn't know the world of sanctions and apartheid. I mean, for them, they went to school with black kids and white kids. They only knew, didn't know color. We grew up in the net blancas in a weird and strange world. And I thought that perhaps people would enjoy that history side of it, having a sort of a glimpse into what the world was like in the closing part of the 20th century.
Now, back to the title of the book. I mean, what was the thought process in coming up with the title Pleasures of the Harbour?
So, Simpiwe, you know, I was born in 1956, so I wasn't part of the hippie generation, but I was certainly around. And there was a contemporary of Bob Dylan's called Phil Oakes, and he made an album called Pleasures of the Harbour. And I loved that album. And as the book is largely about my life in shipping, and I started off in Durban Harbour, the word harbour resonated with me, and I remembered the title, and I thought it'd be a bit ironic because it was quite a time of strife and struggle.
Yeah.
Call it Pleasures of the Harbour.
Okay. What sort of themes or subjects do you explore in this book, and why are they worth shining the spotlight on?
So, Simpiwe, I would like to make the point, and I think I do in the book, that if you're going to start your own business, very good idea to start when you're 23, as I did. I mean, you know, people that the soldiers that go to war are only young men. And at 23, you're very brave. I can't imagine starting a business on my own at 35 with a wife and two kids, a mortgage and a car. So the one message I'd like to pass to the readers is a good idea, if you want to go on your own, to go young, because you're braver and stronger and you have more fortitude.
That's actually a great idea. Now, Adam lives because he's fed up with the clique he set up in Durban. Now, do paint a picture for us, if you can, of this clique, of these sort of cliques.
Well, you know, in those days, in the 70s and 80s, there were about 5 major corporations in South Africa. South Africa was a closed shop because of sanctions. There were 5 or 6 major companies that owned most of the companies on the stock exchange, and they had their own freight companies, and that was it. I mean, for example's sake, there was the Durban Club. The Durban Club didn't allow women. It didn't allow non-whites. They didn't allow Jews. It was an exclusive kind of club. So for me, to start a business, to try and get people to have trust and use my company to do their logistics was very difficult in the beginning. And in fact, I started doing my business out of Beira with Malawian cargo to the People's Republic of China. And I learned a lesson there too, Simpiwe. You know, sometimes it's easier to do business where it's harder to do business.
Yes.
And it's harder to do business where it's easier to do business, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's easier to find the opportunities in a difficult spot than it is to find them in an easier spot.
Ah, got you. Okay, that's one key takeaway that I'm taking for this interview. Now, why the decision, Adam, to set the book in the closing decades of the 20th century?
So, as I mentioned earlier, I started the business when I was 23 in 1980.
Yeah.
So the book really covers the period just prior to 1980 till 2005, when I retired. So it covers that area, which was a very strange area. In the book, I mentioned that I landed in Beira in 1981, and there were puffs of smoke on the south bank of the Pungwe River, opposite the harbour. And I asked the steward, "What's that?" He said, "No, those are MiGs, strafing Renamo positions on the other bank."
Mm-hmm.
And then we landed. There were these stub-nosed MiGs taking off and flying missions 20 kilometers away. As I drove in a taxi into Beira town, there was a big slogan strung between two street lamps on opposite sides of the road saying, "Racista de Africa do Sul." And I kind of realized that was me.
Okay.
It was a weird time for a young boy in South Africa.
I can imagine. And given the fact that writing has been your passion since you were a teenager, at what point then did you decide it was time to revisit and make it a reality?
So when I retired in 2005, I went farming. And I didn't succeed as a farmer. And so when I retired from my second career, there was a time to start writing. It was very difficult to start because, I'd been a businessman for 40 years. So when it came to writing, it was a memo, sort of bullet points, which is not the way you write a novel.
Okay.
So very, very fortunately, I was put in touch by a friend of a company called All About Writing, and they mentored me through this process and helped me create the novel, because I felt a novel is much more readable than a biography or a business manual.
And your motto in life, Adam, is we are each responsible for the quality of our own lives. What do you mean by this?
Well, my late father was a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, how do you help these people with mental difficulties? He said, well, they must want help. Mm-hmm. If they want help, I can help them. He said, we're all responsible for the quality of our own lives. And it's a good philosophy in life. You can't blame the world for what's happened to you or what's happening to you. You have to get out and do it. A friend of mine made a great quote the other day. She said, with great determination, you can achieve great distance. And I think that's another expression of what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Now, Adam, where do we get a copy of this book?
So, Simpiwe, the book is available at all good bookstores. Mm-hmm. You can order it online through Loot, or you can download it through Kindle. I yesterday had a seminal moment in my life. I went into one of the bookstores and I found the book there. Right. And that's something I've been dreaming of for 40 years, more than 40 years.
So since now you've got more time to keep writing, any likelihood of a sequel to this book?
So what I've planned, Simpiwe, is a trilogy. My life from 7 to 17. I mean, it was a peculiar life growing up in, for example's sake, I grew up in a mine hospital in Brakpan, isolated. So in the morning I went to a whites-only school. In the afternoon, the only people to play with were the kids of the workers at the hospital. So it was white only in the morning and black only in the afternoon. My great friend was Patat. So it was a strange life, and I've tried to describe that. So that'll be the prequel. And then after that will be my life as a farmer in the Natal Midlands.
Jeez, I'm actually looking forward to that prequel. All right, Adam, great chatting to you.
Simpiwe, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Great stuff. It's an absolute pleasure. Well, the intrepid entrepreneur, explorer and author Adam Jethro speaking to us about his debut novel titled Pleasures of the Harbour, which tells the story of a young man's fortitude to achieve his life goals. All right, great read that is.